The BBC have admitted to editing out laughter directed at Boris Johnson during his debate against Jeremy Corbyn. Now, this was caught by Nick Flax on Twitter, and I'm going to show you both clips here. So this first clip in this series, the first clip is going to be with the laughter, so the original clip, and the second clip that follows it is going to be what the BBC aired later on with no laughter. So watch this.
I'd just like to ask you, how important is it for someone in your position of power to always tell the truth?
I think it's absolutely vital.
How important is it for someone in your position of power to always tell the truth?
I think it's absolutely vital, and I think that the issue of trust in politics is...
Now, it's obvious, it's clear, and editing out the laughter completely changes the tone of the clip. So when you have the laughter in the clip, it goes to show you, hey, everybody knows Boris Johnson is a liar. And this question is funny because it's directed at a guy who lies all the time. Just to give you some examples here. General election, 43 lies, gaffes, and scandals that make Boris Johnson unfit to rule. This from David Hare at New Statesman. We know Boris Johnson is a liar. It's his enablers who are most culpable. This from Peter Oborne at The Guardian. It's not just Boris Johnson's lying, it's that the media let him get away with it. So these are all articles, by the way, that are out there before this clip even was a thing, but shows you it's a known thing that Boris Johnson is a liar. Now, the BBC eventually admitted to editing out the laughter, saying this here. The BBC has claimed it made a mistake in editing a clip where it cut out an audience laughing at Boris Johnson, insisting the decision was made due to time constraints rather than political bias. Now, it's impossible to know what the reality is. I've worked in television. I've been an editor for the news. I mean, it's a second. It's like 1 second. And editing out that second does completely change the tone of the clip. So there is no reason. I mean, oftentimes when you work in news, you see how much time has to be padded onto things, how much they let clips just roll on so that they can pad out the end of the show. I mean, 1 second is not a big deal. You don't need to edit out 1 second. So, especially in the case where it changes the tone of the clip. Now, on top of that, look, even if it was for time constraints, this appears to be a pattern of behavior where it is the coverage of this election is negatively impacting Corbyn and the Labour Party. So after BBC admitted to this, Owen Jones tweeted out here, "This isn't good enough. Why do these mistakes by the BBC always seem to be good for the Tories and bad for Labour? We're licensed payers and we deserve a public broadcaster which is fair, honest, and impartial." And he's exactly right. And this is a problem as well for our public broadcaster in Canada, the CBC, where there is this bias towards the elite. This piece from Tom Mills at The Guardian breaks down why this bias exists. The BBC's fabled impartiality was only ever an elite consensus. Ultimately, it is an organization accountable not to the public, nor even to Parliament, but to the heart of government. And this continues to shape the culture of its newsrooms and its political programming. It's not that presenters and reporters take instructions from the government or anyone else, as is sometimes alleged, but like any organization, the BBC has a particular working culture based around policies, conventions, and incentives that influence how the people who work there behave, as well as who is appointed or promoted. So this is an important point here. There aren't, people in smoke-filled rooms telling journalists, what to write, what to report on. At least, I mean, if that exists, that isn't what's driving most of the coverage, and that really isn't the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is who is hired. It's the work culture, the work environment, what people that are operating within this bubble in the BBC, what is seen as normal thinking. So as he goes on here to say, at the top, there is a board made up of a mix of senior BBC managers, government appointees, and other establishment figures. Beneath them is a highly paid group of executives, disproportionately drawn from private schools and Oxbridge, who know that the BBC depends on governments for its funding and its long-term survival. Then there are the BBC senior political journalists, whose work defines the tone of its output. Fiona Bruce, Evan Davis, Michelle Hussein, Laura Koonsberg, Emily Matlis, and Nick Robinson are all paid upwards of £250,000 a year, and with the exception of Koonsberg, all attended Oxbridge colleges. All this shapes the BBC's collective sense of how political stories should be reported, how, quote, due impartiality should be construed, and how competing claims of bias should be negotiated. So, I mean, the main point here is that a lot of these people come from the same elite class of colleges, Oxbridge colleges. So these colleges are looked at as more elitist, and with it comes a certain economic worldview. So if you mainly only hire people from a certain economic worldview, then you're going to get a certain output of content from that publication or that network. And look, it's fine to represent that view. There's nothing wrong with having people from Oxbridge colleges, but it should be one of many views. There should be a diversity of opinion at these places, not simply based on ethnicity or race, but also based in class, based in economics. So if you have everybody looking at these economic issues with the same lens, then it's going to obviously have an impact on what you put out that is only skewed towards positive coverage of a certain political system. Now, this is also why independent media is so important. So people like Owen Jones, who I quoted earlier, or Ash Sarkar, or Navarra Media. So these are places that do independent reporting, or people that do independent reporting that aren't tied to these massive media organizations that have a particular worldview. So it's important to support independent reporting in the UK like those people, as well as if you're in the US or Canada, independent reporting like mine or other channels on YouTube and other independent publications online. So on top of everything else here, there is a general election coming up in the UK in the next few weeks. The deadline to register is today, the 26th, by 11:59 p.m., obviously in UK time. So make sure you get your friends and family out. Make sure they are registered now. I mean, if you're watching this video, hopefully today, you only have a few hours left at this point. So you have to ensure you're registered. Your friends and family are registered. People that aren't normally into politics are registered. That's how you really change the system for the people. You have to get non-voters out to vote. Young people, especially, out to vote. That is how you change things. So unless you have a massive influx of new voters this time around, not much is going to change.